might be hijacked at this point to kind of offer solutions that aren't so productive, so to speak, to people that actually are very concerned about our environment and our planet. But many of these people, I think, feel should be, interested in many of these types of subjects as well, and studying the Earth overall and understanding how energy flow and where we put our cities on and where we pollute, what areas we put on some of these plants and things like this. But if we go back and just talk about the ley lines again, I understand that you have quite a big kind of area that you do go into when it comes to the misconceptions about what we when we discuss ley lines. First of all, we have this area of that we're always considering that a ley line is something that is going straight in a straight line. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Lots of people who will be listening will probably have gotten, it's called a UVG net, which you can get for Google Earth. And it's a program which is being created to kind of give an analog or an idea of some of the ley lines around the Earth and kind of some of the most powerful nodes and areas of activity which people have logged. And lots of different people have come together to make this grid, which you can have a search for it, the UVG grid for Google Earth, and then you can implement it over the top, so you can actually look at some of the ley lines. So
it's just to clarify for people who are using Google Earth, this is a kind of plug-in to Google Earth, if you will. Is that correct?
Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, if you look for this, just type in on a search engine the UVG plugin or UVG grid, and there's lots of sites which have got it for you to download.
Great.
So you can have a look at that.
Great.
Yeah.
And that will that show you in what we're getting at here? What we're talking about is the fact that we're looking for all these straight lines everywhere. But will this program you say, or this plugin to Google Earth, give you a more realistic view of what ley lines actually are and how they look?
Well, no. That's what I wanted to explain. Was even though I do encourage anybody who hasn't seen this net, anybody who hasn't done that, I really do encourage you to go and have a look.
Yes.
But at the same time, because of these programs and lots of other illustrations and drawings and other graphics which have been put around on the net, people do associate ley lines with kind of some glowing power line that goes, from A to B.
Yes.
And in all truthfulness, that's actually correct, only because a ley line is a term which literally means drawing a straight line from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a ley line actually refers to. So there's a lot of ambiguation about this word, but the ley line term itself means a line which you've drawn on a map from one place to another. But when people, I think, when they're talking about ley lines, really what they mean is the energy lines going around the Earth, which are very different. And ley lines is the way that we have kind of mapped these as an analog. From, as we talked about Hamish Miller, this line which he actually dowsed all the way up it, even though you can draw a straight line from East Anglia all the way down through the southwest and out the bottom of Cornwall, and the line will go through all of these churches and sacred sites and stone circles and dolmens. It's just, as we say, an analog, so it gives you an idea. So the actual appearance of these energy lines, very different from any picture you will see on the net or find in most books, is actually more like a river, like an electrical river, which is actually meandering around this line.
Right.
And at the points where you have the churches and the sacred sites are the points where the male and the female line actually cross over.
Oh, really?
So we can use it as an analog in terms of, we know that this river snakes down this general area, and that at different points where these two rivers cross, that you have the points that they're actually marking. But yeah, we must always keep it in our mind that these energy lines are hugely affected by the sun, they're hugely affected by the moon, and they're also obviously affected by the actual frequency and the speed which the Earth's resonance is moving at.
Yes.
and so they're very dynamic.
Does this mean that they potentially also move or migrate?
Precisely, yeah. They're dynamic, and so all day they're moving. A good dowser, not somebody who just says there's a line here, but an actual dowser. If he's standing on the line, he'll be moving back and forth, left and right, and they usually move between kind of 5 to 10 meters, the epicenter, the strongest part of it, through the day. They're always moving left and right, always alternating. But overall, when we're thinking of these energy lines, each one of these rivers has millions of smaller tributaries which runs off it, like a capillary.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, because I'm thinking of a human body, basically. Yes.
Precisely. I mean, it's the perfect metaphor in terms of personal understanding and literal understanding, I believe. So yeah, you have these millions of small capillaries coming off these main lines, and all of these capillaries are moving dynamically in the same way that the main line is. So really, what you have is a huge band. Kind of, if you were to actually have a picture of this kind of energy field from these lines, and as we said, it's moving through the day. A more accurate way would be kind of to just mark a big band on a map,
Yes.
Over this area. But even then, at that point, with people understanding all of that, people are always thinking that they need to go somewhere else to get to a sacred spot. But the whole world is covered with these things. This is the, as we say, with the body.
Yes.
It's the capillary, it's the lifeblood of the earth that allows a lot of the different physioelectric effects and organic effects and lots of other things to actually occur anyway. So it's a much more dynamic system than people imagine. If they're thinking that it's a glowing blue line which goes, through Silbury Hill and hits a certain stone of a certain cathedral, it may do at certain points in the day, but this is an actual fluctuating line, very much like a line of lightning or something. That's constantly moving.
Yes, exactly.
Not a dead energy line.
No, exactly. It's not static. This again is a part of nature. Therefore, it's going to be alive. It's going to be moving. It's going to be changing all the time. That's the properties.
And it seems obviously quite simple. Talking about it, but a lot of people don't really get that.
Yes.
And so, hopefully, in years to come, people are going to understand this a bit more and understand about that all of the dynamics of these concepts, of these things which we, for a long time, have totally either denied exist or stopped paying attention to.
Dan, you mentioned the female and male lines. I would like to dive into a little bit more of what defines the difference between these two lines.
Sure. Well, the way that Hamish Miller had charted it out, obviously I explained that him and the guy that they actually did it with had followed both these lines, and they thought that the major differences were that the churches which were dedicated to Michael would have the male line running through them, and that the male line was a lot stronger energy and a lot more intense, and it was a lot more affected by the sun in the morning. Whereas the sites on this line which had this feminine energy were often churches dedicated to Mary, and that they had a much more feminine, softer, smoother, kind of more ethereal energy, and that they were more affected by the moon in the night. And so, this isn't a kind of a very well charted field. As I said, it's such a new field that there's not really more definitions that we could put on it from the Michael and Mary line.
Yes.
Because a lot more research needs to be done into this, into the effects of how electricity, electromagnetism, actually moves through different stones, and how it, as we say, how this lifeblood of the earth actually does travel in this sacred circuit around the earth. And so a lot more work needs to be done into that. But if we can take it back to Egypt, we have one of the most famous motifs from Egypt we have is the 9 gods, known as the Ennead. And the obvious balance between male and female is shown with the gods. And as I said, these sites would be equated with the different gods as well, based on, I believe, on the dowsing abilities of these Egyptians, that they could actually locate quite accurately the right temple for the right energy of that place. And so the male and the female aspect, as I said, in connection with the sun and the moon, with Hamish Miller's work, this is something that we find throughout the ancient world, is the equation of the sun with a male force and the moon with a female force.
Yes.
And we find it through the medieval alchemists. We find it in absolutely every esoteric tradition.
Yeah.
And it's one of the kind of the simple key things that you have to learn quite early on. It's not high level. And even though the ins and outs of it, as we're saying, the variables of it are very complex, the concept itself is really quite simple. And the majority of the information that we are talking about tonight, I believe people know this already.
On a more intuitive level?
Yeah, I mean, we know this from a kid, from when we're children, when we go to a place and some buildings make us feel funny.
Yes.
We don't like them, and some buildings and places make us feel good, and we can't articulate what we're feeling, but we understand it. So all of this information, even though it can seem quite complex, all of it is, in its concept, very simple. And I do think that all of us already know this, so hopefully we'll be able to kind of jog people's memories and tie a few knots together.
Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking back to how the kind of standard perception of a church, for instance. It's a place of kind of comfort during the day, but then at nighttime it potentially becomes a scary place because of, they have the graveyard close by and things like that. So the energy, so to speak, of the place itself seem to change because of the setting of the sun and rising of the moon, basically. Yeah. I mean, it was always equated in terms of geomancy and kind of symbolism to be this very simple concept that I've talked about with the sun and the male and the female and the moon. But obviously, it's not quite as simple as that in its actual application. And based on either harmonic or unharmonic ratios, balances, and intent, you can make these energies quite unbalanced. And so, I think that's what we see in a lot of these churches. And other authors have talked that some churches and places seem to have a personality. And a lot of the Christian churches have got quite a grumpy personality, which is funny, because I mean, with the misunderstanding of a lot of these techniques which were used in the ancient world, and with also conscious knowledge, I think that a lot of these effects which you're noting popped up. I just want to go back a little bit and talk a little bit more about you mentioned the was before, among other things, a symbol of power and domination, or a staff of that. But there's another kind of interesting correlation between the male, that's called the jed, and then we have the tiet of the female. Tell us a little bit about that relationship between these different properties, and also, of course, what these symbols signify.
Sure. I guess in a way that this information is really what led me to my conclusion that this was a tool which could be used for geomancy, this staff, is that when we see in ancient Egypt the staff in stela, even if it is in the hand of an individual, or if not, often it's shown next to a pillar, which, as you said, is known as the jed pillar. And often it will be also next to the tiet, which is known as the blood of Isis, or the knot of Isis. And